that is a lot of times when I meet with students, so now obviously it's virtual or email, they always tell me that they're going to go to grad school. And I'm like, okay, cool. In what? And they're like, well, duh, psychology. And I'm like, well, no, duh. Psych is huge. Like, what within psychology do you want to do? And they're like, counseling. And I'm like, cool, that's not psychology necessarily. So I want to make sure that you are doing some research on your career. And in the meantime, though, I'll share you on how to get ready for grad school, no matter what grad program that's going to be, including like my program. I did my master's degree in higher education. So that's different than what a lot of students are probably going to go into. All right, let me share. Okay, you guys can see that. Oh, apparently I still have transitions on. So honestly, majority of our students aren't able to go to grad school, or maybe not right away. I think it was like only 40% go to grad school. I don't know if that statistic includes maybe they're going later or now. It's interesting. So I'm not really sure where that statistic's from. I learned that from Dr. Motorella, Career Readiness 1. And then the other thing is I do know that only about 40% will stay in the field of psychology, such as IO, human factors, or clinical psychology. The other 60% go into various other fields like education or counseling or human resources, business. They get their MBA. So there's all kinds of different areas that you can do with just your bachelor's degree in psych. You're not limited to psych. There's even more options. Look at this really old picture of the psych building. The big old tree's not there. So my big thing is, do you need grad school for the career you have in mind? Is that a requirement? So that's something you got to do some research in. So that's why my presentation earlier this week was on careers. Careers comes first. What career do you want? What are you interested in? What is your personality like? And how does that fit into a career? That's going to be something you need to ask first. And in that career, does that career need a graduate degree? Or can you get into that career entry level and have that career pay for your graduate degree? So that's something to look into as well. Now, say you found a career and yep, you need a graduate degree. Does that graduate program need to be accredited? Is accreditation necessary? For example, if you want to be a psychologist, a clinical psychologist, you have to go to an APA accredited grad program. If you want to work in America, it needs that so that you can get your licensure. Most master's programs may not need accreditation, but you still want to make sure that you're going to get to your licensure. Like for counseling, you need to get licensed. You want to still make sure that that's an appropriate step that's going to happen. So that's going to be important, is to look into that point as well. And then so you say, yep, you found a few accredited grad programs that you want to apply to. You got to look at what is needed to apply. Each grad program is going to have different application requirements. And so that's something to look into. Are there prerequisite courses to apply? As a psych student, you're a bachelor student in psychology. If you're applying obviously to a psych program, you're probably fine with the things you have. Maybe not for neuropsychology. You might need additional sciences to apply for a neuropsych grad program. But other than that, you're usually okay. Now, say you want to get your MBA, your master's in business administration. There may be some business classes you need to take. If you want to go to law school, I don't think you need any classes. If you want to go to med school, yeah, you need tons of prereq classes. So it really does depend on where you're going after this. If there's going to be prereq courses. We're going to talk about the GRE because most of our students are going to apply to grad programs that require the graduate record exam. But like I said, law school needs the LSAT, med school needs the MCAT. Some business programs, sometimes even like an IO kind of program, might need the GMAT. So that's really important to look at when you're looking at what's needed to apply. You're going to need letters of recommendation, and you need to find out who should they be from. From my personal experience of digging through application requirements for psych grad programs, like the UCF psych grad programs, they want 2 letters from faculty, 2. But my master's program in higher ed just didn't specify. They just said we need 3 letters. So I gave them 3 letters. So that's going to be important too, is to really dig and see what is needed to apply specifically, even just for letters of recommendation. Does your program require a personal or goal statement essay, and how do we write that? Or does it want some other form of writing? Maybe they just want a writing sample. The MSW, Masters of Social Work here at UCF, just wants a writing sample. Actually, they want both. They want a personal statement and a writing sample, but they don't want the GRE, so that's a trade. Is the program you're going to apply to prefer a CV, a curriculum vitae, or are they okay with just a resume? Is there going to be an interview? Once you've applied, you turn it in, are you expecting an interview for the program? That's something else that you'll want to do some research on and see if that's needed. And then of course, my big question, because I was a broke college student, I'm still broke, is how are you going to pay for your graduate degree? I mentioned maybe your career will pay for it. Maybe the company you're working for might pay for your graduate degree. So that's something else to look into as well. And we'll talk about that. Again, if you have any questions for me, go ahead and add them to the chat and our peer advisors will assist you with them, and I'll get to them towards the end. Here we go. So what do you need to apply? We're going to start first with really the number 1 and 2 things that grad programs are looking at. These do way more than all that other stuff that we're going to cover. Your GPA, number 1 thing, and the GRE or whatever test they want is probably the number 2 thing. The reason that those are so important for grad programs is because they're looking at the statistics. Numbers are something that they can see and visualize and know that we have the best applicants possible. Just look at how high their GPAs are. That's something that they can, share and showcase of their students. So GPA is the top thing. So really make sure you're focusing on your grades as much as possible. Most master's programs want at least a 3.0, and the doctorate is going to want a 3.5 or higher. Now, if you're not meeting those GPAs, you could look at a private school. It's going to be more expensive. Or looking to working and gaining more work experience and real world experience before applying. So that's another option. If your GPA is still low and you're worried, go talk to that grad program, go talk to a professional in the field to find out what you should be doing to stand out in a good way. We're going to talk about the GRE, Graduate Record Exam. That's what most of our programs are looking for grad school. Because of the coronavirus, I have heard that some grad programs are waiving the GRE. You don't need it. That's amazing. There are some programs that still want it. I have noticed the UCF programs so far do still want the GRE. And it is, I think, a virtual test now. You can take it from home, which is not really fun to do, but it is still possible. So for the GRE, the general exam, that's what most grad programs are looking for, is just a general exam. There's really 3 areas. The quantitative, that's the math. The qualitative is more the reading and vocab, and then the writing. The writing portion, you're going to get a score, and you want ideally to get a 3 or higher, especially if it's more of a writing program, even higher. I think I only got a 3. And then for the quantitative and qualitative, you want around a 300 average for those. So like a 150 in quantitative and a 150 in qualitative, around there. If you get a 160, 140 or 120, 180, that's a little weird, but that's usually okay, depending on the program you're applying to. If you're applying for an engineering graduate degree, you probably need a higher quantitative, of course. So it just depends on the program that you're going for. So a master's, you're looking for around a 300 average. That's typically what some master's programs list as their minimum, is a 300. I have seen that PsyD programs list about a 305, and I have seen PhDs list like a 315 for that general exam. Now, some of you guys are applying to psych programs, and so you might be taking this psych subject test specifically. Now, that exam, I think, is only offered like 3 times a year, whereas the general exam is offered multiple times a week, a day even. but not most students don't need the psych test. That's really only if you're applying for a psych specific program that asks for that test. For example, our UCF PhD for psychology does require the psych and the general test. So that's something to look into. And so they focus on the psych tests, the experimental, social, methods and methodology, basically everything you've been doing for your bachelor's degree anyways. And the scores that are listed there, I got that information just from like the GRE website. That's pretty much where all this comes from. So definitely make sure you're familiar with the GRE website. If you're not much of a test taker, practice. Oh, I wonder if I think I have more on the next slide. I do. Let's see. I'll come back to that. Practice for the GRE. Kaplan has a free online test that you can do. Of course, they're trying to sell their test program to you, but it's actually a pretty good program. Kaplan and Princeton Review, they have like a deal. If you don't get the score you want, you can take their class again. UCF Continuing Education, their class is much cheaper. And then Magoosh, students have taught me about Magoosh is an even much cheaper resource for test prep. But if you can practice it, those classes usually have practice books. If you're not doing one of those expensive classes, then you can always just get your own practice book and study as if you're in a class. Give yourself plenty of time in advance to study and time to retake the GRE if you need to. Hopefully you don't need to. It's expensive. It's like $200 each time. There is, if you get financial aid, I think there's help with financial aid. So talk to the UCF financial aid office when you're getting ready to take the GRE. The score lasts for 5 years. So you could take it now and be ready to apply for grad school. I wouldn't take it now. Definitely study, prepare. It is a 4-hour test. You can take it every 21 days, but and this is no more than 5 times in a year. I wouldn't take it more than twice if you can. Try and limit just the 1 time if possible. But if you need to take it twice, if you know you just had like a really bad testing day, yeah, definitely take it again. And just, yeah, prepare for that. And that's why I said, make sure you have time to retake it before the deadline of the grad program application. So letters of recommendation should be coming from professionals that can verify your ability to succeed in grad school. So they do need to know you. I know for our psych classes, they're pretty large. It's harder to build that relationship with the faculty member, but you can do it. Do a teaching assistant position with our professors and or a research assistant with our professors. They'll get to know you a lot better and they'll likely write you a letter of recommendation. So when you have professionals that can vouch for you, you're going to want to try and talk to them. I know I wrote in person, but try and talk to them maybe virtually. Do you think you can write me a strong letter of recommendation? And hopefully they can say yes. And so you can say, great, I'm going to provide information for you. Here's instructions on how the letters are going to be received. Here's my resume. Here's my degree audit, if you're comfortable with sharing that. And here's a draft of my personal statement. Giving that information to your letter writers makes it a lot easier for them to write a stronger letter of recommendation. When you're submitting your letters of recommendation, sometimes there's going to be a form that you mail in and they're going to mail everything in. Make sure you provide stamped envelope, everything like that to your letter writers. I'm hoping we're not really doing mail-in stuff too much anymore with everything going on, so it's probably going to be more electronic. And then that would just be like, well, here's your instructions on how to do it electronically. That when you're doing it, make sure you're checking that box that says waive your right to view the letters. Yes, you have a right to view the letters that the letter writers are writing for you, but I recommend that you waive that right. It looks like you have confidence that they're writing you a strong letter, which hopefully you do because you asked them, will you write me a strong letter of recommendation? If you do have someone that's a little hesitant, they're like, I don't know about strong, that's something to be concerned of, and you're going to want to find someone else that could write you a letter. Like, it's okay. If you're not able to write me a strong letter, maybe you could be my backup. I'll go ask somebody else. So that's why it's important to make sure you're building these relationships with your faculty, with work, in an internship, in a volunteer position, so that way you can get those letters of recommendation. And don't forget a thank you letter. That would be a really good opportunity for you to mail something back to that person, is mail them a thank you letter. A mailed letter looks a lot better than just a simple email. At least do an email if you can't mail in something. But a thank you letter is definitely really appreciated from us that write letters of recommendation. I hang them up in my office. Let's see, I'll come back to that. Personal statement. So when you're applying to graduate programs, a lot of them require a personal statement or goal statement, but a lot of them don't include any kind of instructions on what that essay is going to look like or have or include. And so this is information that I've learned from, of course, me applying to grad school and working with Career Services who help students with grad school. In fact, Career Services will help critique your personal statement, goal statement essay. Maybe your letter writers might too. So always feel free to offer, ask them if they would do that for you. And the Writing Center can also help too. The Writing Center is going to be more of like sentence structure and grammar, but Career Services is going to be good about the meat. What is setting you apart from other applicants, organizing it properly, all that good stuff. So the main things that you're going to want to include in your personal statement, if they don't specify what to include, is what have you accomplished? What have you done that's relevant, that's confirmed that this is your career for you? Like, for sure, this is it. Especially if you can talk about a specific example that was like your aha moment. This one time I was volunteering with the Mental Health Association of Central Florida, and I got to work directly with a patient, and I just saw how the small work that I did helped them tremendously with their case, and I know 100% that this is for me. So especially if you can have a specific example, that is amazing. Think about what makes you unique and sets you apart from other applicants. Do you work full-time while attending school? Are you the first in your family to go to undergrad or go to grad school? There's lots of things that makes you unique and makes you special. So make sure that you're showcasing yourself and not minimizing yourself and your experiences. You also want to share, who do you want to work with in that grad program? Especially if you're going to a research program like a doctorate, you need to be able to share, this is the professor I want to work with. This is the research I want to do. This is how I'm going to grow this field of research. Now, more for the other fields, you would just share more of like, I'm looking forward to this class, this class, this class, because this is the area of counseling I want to do, or area I want to work with in this field. And what does your vision of your future look like? I see myself many years later working for an agency, potentially, becoming the director, anything like that. So where do you see yourself after you graduate that graduate program? And like I said, have everybody read your personal statement, Career Services, Writing Center, your letter writers, anyone that's going to ask. I even had my mom read mine. She's actually really good at grammar and stuff, so that was very helpful. Anyone that you can find that's going to help you with that, I would have them look at it. Make sure it makes sense. It needs to be concise. You need to still show that you are a graduate level writer. So you have to have some nice big words in there, but it needs to flow as well. So that's why I think having multiple people read it is going to be helpful for that. CV. So if you are going into research field, you'll need a CV as opposed to a resume. Career Services has a lot of handouts and help on how to do a CV, and they can help critique your resume and move it into a CV. You can look at example CVs online, but that's going to be important that you're focusing your CV is more research focused, is you're changing your resume to be more research focused if that's what you're going into. Again, most of our students aren't. That's only 40% are probably going into the research psych fields. The other 60% are going more into applied fields like me. You just need a resume, and resumes are supposed to be 1 page. It's not likely to be 2 as an undergrad because you're still gaining experiences. And again, career services can help you with that. Definitely look at the resources they have. They have lots of workshops for it. And you can do one-on-one appointments with them as well. You will need to make a handshake account to set that up with them. So just make sure that you have a handshake account if you don't already. Oh, and then interview. So a lot of grad programs do have an interview, but not all of them. Mine didn't. I don't think the IO Psych Masters does. Maybe they're going to change that. I don't know. So it's always good to practice for interview, practice possible questions you might get. If you are going into counseling, which a lot of you said you were, I actually have a list of interview questions on our Psych Advising Center website from my alumni that went on to counseling fields. I have like 30 questions, but like every 3 questions is basically the same question. So there's lots of different ways that you could get that question and lots of different ways for you to practice answering those questions. So definitely check out our Psych Advising Center website to see those questions. Interview help, again, that's career services. They can do a Zoom session with you and practice the interview as if they're the grad program. So that's something to get some help with, especially because if grad programs are doing interviews, they're probably going to do it virtually like this. And so that'll be a good way to get practice doing that is meeting with career services, because a career services advisor is essentially a stranger to you, just like the grad program is going to be a stranger to you. So it's good practice. Practice makes perfect for sure. And then my favorite topic, how are you going to pay for this? Grad school is expensive. And again, that's something to look at is, does your career need a graduate degree? Because is this going to help you with increasing your salary or not? Especially counselors don't make a lot of money. You can make more money being a teacher without a bachelor's degree, graduate degree, sorry. So that's definitely really important is to look at the cost for paying for it, or your salary costs, the pros and cons for that. For me, it was worth going to grad school. I wouldn't be able to do my job without it. I did have to take out loans to pay for it. But I would do it all over again if I had to. Now, PhD programs are typically fully funded. That's what makes them ridiculously competitive to get into a PhD program, is because there's usually a lot of funding that's involved with it. And that program, like UCF's clinical psych program, for example, only has like 5 grants a year. So they only have 5 spots. Now, if you come in with your own grant, like you did a research grant or something that's going to pay for your doctorate, cool. Then that'll help you get accepted. But that's obviously really hard to get. So that's what makes PhD programs really competitive, is that there's typically funding associated with it, and it makes them even harder to get into. Now, other programs, PsyDs and masters, there's usually quite a few scholarships and fellowships. That's free money. So look at that school's website to see what kind of scholarships they have. There's lots of scholarships that you can find online. So definitely do some searching, find that free money. Sometimes you have to write an essay and maybe you'll get $1,000. $1,000 isn't very much, but hey, that'll pay your books for one of your classes. I'm just kidding. It'll probably pay for all your class books, but still, definitely look into that. What I did as a grad student was I got an assistantship, a graduate assistantship, or GA position, is a job on campus working 20 hours a week. So it's a part-time job. You get a stipend, which is about $12 an hour. It was $10 an hour when I was a student. That's how long ago it was. But you also get your tuition covered. So even if you are applying to private schools that are more expensive, or out-of-state schools that might have an out-of-state price, your tuition's probably going to get covered if you land a GA position, that job on campus. There's other GA positions, like being a graduate teaching assistant, a GTA, or a graduate research assistant, a GRA. And if you're already in undergrad now, working as a teaching assistant or a research assistant or doing work on campus, like as a peer advisor or a mentor or a tutor, that can help open the door to these grad positions later. My favorite, of course, is on-campus housing. If you get a grad assistant position in housing, your housing is also paid as well. So that's always really cool. So having those experiences, working with campus events, working with tutoring, all those stuff is really good to help open doors to GA positions in the future. Even being a leader of a student club will help, because there's probably GA stuff that's relevant. I've already mentioned a few times job benefits. Your job might pay for your graduate degree. So it might be worth it to look at careers in the fields that might pay for you to go to grad school. And then, yes, there's me. I did my student loans to pay for my graduate degree as well, because I didn't get my tuition covered. I just got that $12 an hour for the 20 hours a week. So I did have to get out loans to help pay for living expenses. If you do end up working for the state government or nonprofit agency, after 120 minimum payments, your loans will be forgiven. So it's like 10 years of paying your student loans. Your loans will be forgiven with the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. So especially if you're going to be a counselor, therapist, and you're going to work for one of those agencies, that helps not have to worry so much about the cost of grad school, knowing that it's likely to get forgiven after those 10 years. Has to be those minimum payments though, so it depends. It didn't end up working for me for my loans, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, paying is important. If you've been to any of my webinars, you've already heard me say multiple times, find a professional that's in the field that can mentor you, whether it's a professor or a grad student or someone out in the world or a friend of a friend, a family friend. Find someone that can mentor you through this process. For example, if you want to be an academic advisor, I can tell you all about that, because that's the career that I went into. That's the master's I did. I can share all kinds of cool information with you about the field that you won't be able to find online. But if you want to learn more about being a specific type of therapist, like an ABA therapist, find an ABA therapist that's available to mentor you, that you can continuously ask questions throughout your career, from undergrad to grad school to where you're starting to be a professional in the field. So I definitely recommend that you reach out to UCF alumni, you reach out to community, and see if there's anyone that can answer those questions for you, that it's just not available to find answers online sometimes. I mentioned law school and pre-health, but I don't think anyone commented that they're going towards that fields. If you are going to those fields, definitely make sure that you set up an appointment with pre-health, pre-law advising, because they're going to share all the science classes you need for health and what you should be doing to get into law school. Definitely make sure you reach out to them. They're going to be helpful. You need to ignore the advising center. We're not physically there. I'm home. So don't walk in. But email psychadvising@ucf.edu, and myself or Morgan will assist you if you have questions. We'll help as much as we can. Like I said, I went into the field of academic advising. Morgan's going into school counseling. So we can totally help with those fields, like as a mentor kind of thing, but look into finding someone that's in that field that can directly guide you as much as possible. And now I wanted to address our chat. I see the chat is blowing up. Let's see if I can pull it up. No, it doesn't want to. There we go. Let me thank you guys for your patience as I get through that. I just want to get through the information first, and then we can kind of go through it. Let's see, counseling. For all you guys that are interested in counseling, I hope that you're available to go to our webinar on Monday. Morgan and I are going to be hosting that one together. A lot of counselors. Counseling is interesting. There's so many different types of counselors. There's mental health counseling and clinical social work and clinical psych and marriage and family and ABA and genetic counseling. So you got to kind of think about narrowing it down, but a lot of them are actually very similar. And then a lot of you guys ask questions about what can you do with this besides counseling. everything. You can do any career in this. And that was my last webinar, was you can go into any career, and you need to figure out, does that career need a graduate degree? And if so, how do you get into that grad program? What are those graduate programs application requirements? Yeah, if you want your doctorate, your PhD, or your PsyD, you need research experience. So make sure you're getting involved with our professors with research. Alana asked a good question. Eden already answered it, but I'll address it anyways. When should you take the GRE? When should you have all your stuff ready? You need to have it ready by the application deadline. So whatever that deadline is, make sure you have your GRE done, your letters of rec ready, your personal statement ready, your everything has to be ready. So a lot of deadlines, and I need to add this as a slide then, is a lot of deadlines for master's degrees. Let me back up. Most graduate programs start in the fall. Some of them start fall and spring, but I would say most start in the fall. So that's something you have to do some research on, is when is your grad program going to start? So if it's starting in the fall, most of the deadlines are going to be December of the fall before, if it's a doctorate. For a master's, it's probably going to be more like January of that year that you're applying for that fall, sometimes March, and sometimes June. It just depends on the program that you're applying to, really how competitive they are. So I would say definitely try and get your stuff ready that fall, the year before you're going to start the fall. So if you're graduating next May in 2021 and you want to start grad school in August, September of 2021, you need to have all your application stuff ready this December, this January. So definitely could feel rushed for you, but you do not need to start grad school right after undergrad. You can wait a year, 2 years, 10 years, more, whatever you need to take to get your application ready. Just make sure that if you're building relationships with faculty and staff on campus or your other letter writers, you're maintaining that relationship, because we work with so many students that need our assistance. If I had one of my peer advisors that graduated and then 5 years from now they wanted a letter of recommendation from me, I don't know if I'd be able to write it if they hadn't been keeping up with me the whole time. Social media is not enough. So make sure that you're just maintaining that relationship. You're still talking to them. Hey, this is what I'm doing this year, that kind of thing. And so then if your deadline to apply to your master's program is January, try and take the GRE by November, if not sooner. So that way you can apply for your program. You don't get letters of recommendation now. They will fill out the online form when you go to apply to that school. So letters of recommendation aren't something you physically have or virtually have. It's something that you just ask them, would you write me a letter? And they say, okay, great. Well, here's the instructions on how those schools are going to receive your letters. So us letter writers, send them directly to that school. So again, just make sure you're maintaining that relationship with them, so they know to expect you're going to ask for letters closer to your application time. And then for studying for the GRE, I only studied for like a month because I didn't realize my application was coming up. Don't do that. Take a much longer time to study. I know I could have gotten a much better score if I had more time to study. So just make sure that you're giving yourself enough time, especially if you're not a test taker. Practice the test several times. Sit for those 4 hours at your own home and do a practice test, because I feel like stamina is a part of it too. And yeah, just practice as much as you can. Let's see. GPA, good question. So GPA, I mentioned, needs to be a 3.0 for master's, 3.5 or higher for doctorate. That's kind of like all your GPAs need to be around there. Most grad programs care mostly about the last 60 hours of your degree. And that's not on your audit. You have to calculate the last 60 hours on your own. So it's kind of annoying. But if you transferred to UCF and you completed your last 60 at UCF, it's likely your UCF GPA is a good indicator of the GPA that grad programs are really focusing on. They're going to see all your GPAs, and all of them need to be around there. But say maybe your overall is a 2.7, but your UCF is a 3.1, that's great news. Just try and get the best GPA possible. And to do that, honestly, see if you can take less classes so you can focus on earning A's and B's in your classes as much as possible. Try not to rush through your undergrad degree if you can help it, so that way you can focus on those grades, because like I said, GPA is the number one thing that grad programs are reviewing. Like I said, there are options. If your GPA is not hot, probably going to be spending a little bit more money to get your graduate degree. But it's definitely not impossible. If you want a graduate degree, you're going to get it. It's going to happen for you. And just be ready, because grad school is rough. You don't have friends during those years. Not yet. Like you got to wait 2 to 3 years and just focus on taking care of yourself, because you got to sleep and eat. And some of you are going to have to work. Like I worked my GA positions, and you're going to have internships, and you're going to be reading so much and writing so much. Grad school's rough. It can be rough. But if you're doing the things in undergrad, like an internship, and you're already working and you're earning letters of recommendation and you're maintaining a good GPA, you should be ready for it. It helps that my graduate degree was a lot more relevant to the career that I wanted to do. So it was more applied. I could see myself using it. So I really actually did like reading, all the readings that I had to do. Let's see. Oh, thanks, Eden, for sharing our website and for the PHPL website. GPA, I think I answered that. What do you do with letters? We answered that. What other types of grad programs are out there? I don't know, everything. Think of a grad program, you can do it. You want to go into engineering masters? Might be a little bit of a challenging without the engineering classes, but not impossible. You can go get your MBA, go to law school, go to med school. You literally could do any career. So again, you have to figure out what career do you want and where does that need a graduate degree for that career, and you could go for it. So literally every graduate degree that's out there you can do. Our website, here I can share that. Let's see. Ignore that. So this is the Advising Center website. It's actually getting a rehaul, so it's not going to look too much like this anymore soon. But under my site careers you can do with more than a bachelor's degree. Here are some careers you can do with more than a bachelor's degree that's going to obviously require a graduate degree. So business, things with children, counseling, education, health and medical, you know, you think it, you could do it. So here's education. You want to go into education like me to be an academic advisor, you're going to need a graduate degree, or career counselor, or a school psychologist, or student affairs professional, something on in higher ed. There's literally multiple careers you could do. So thousands are the answer, anything. Oops, not what I want. There's my chat. That's a great question, Stephanie. Yes, you could totally ask letters from faculty who are the advisors for student clubs, especially if you're a leader in that student club. You can ask anybody that's available to vouch for your ability to succeed for grad school. It's just some of your graduate programs are going to require or specify that they come from professors, but they don't necessarily need to be psych professors. So say you transferred, you can ask professors from that school if they could be a letter writer, especially if they know you really well and they're able to vouch for your ability to succeed. I missed some questions. Going back. Heba, you and I need to talk about becoming a career counselor. I can tell you a lot about that. So go ahead and email me, and I'll share as much wisdom as I can about that career with you. Marcus asks, how many classes for undergrad? It's really up to your financial aid and what you can handle. If you do need to be full-time for financial aid, you need at least 12 credits. So that's typically what I advise students to do, is just focus on the 12 credits in fall and spring, but do at least 6 in the summer. So that way you're still getting 30 credits a year to graduate in like the 4-year span. But if that's too much for you, and or you don't get financial aid, you can take less credits and just graduate a little bit slower. Melissa asks, how do you recommend getting experience? Look for teaching assistant positions. Our faculty needs lots of TAs right now with being virtual. You can be a research assistant. That's an important internship. Anything helping people is also going to be important if your goal is to go into like counseling. Yeah, a lot of campus things have moved online. So even being a tutor or a mentor or career peer advisor, or my peer advisors are all online right now. So just, look for those opportunities with campus. Follow them on social media. That's typically how I always found positions myself, was through social media. Ask around, email those offices, and see when they're hiring. Do all psych PhDs require the psych subsection of the GRE? I don't know. You'd have to look at that program to see what GRE do they want. Do they want the psych one? Do they want the general one? That's something you'll have to research each specific program. So I'll go back to that on my, really this slide here I like, because this is kind of like the general, what do you need? So your application requirements are going to vary depending on the program, depending on the school. I have heard you should be applying for like 8 graduate programs. That's a lot in my mind, because I could only apply to the one. It's up to you what you can do, what you can handle, but look at those different graduate programs and what's needed to apply. When is their deadline to apply? And are they asking for specific letters of recommendation? Are they asking for a specific GRE or other exam? That's kind of nice that there are a lot of schools that are waiving that GRE this year. I think that's cool. I don't think UCF programs are. Maybe because we're so competitive. I don't know. So that's something to look into. Students often ask me too, what school should they apply to? And it really depends on the fields. Like if you want to go into IO psychology, typically you're going to be looking for a program that has a good, well, any program should have a good internship. So like IO psychology in a big city, a bigger city, more urban area is going to have pretty cool internships and businesses to work for. So like DC, New York City, LA. Orlando's not a huge city, but we got some cool places to work for, like the theme parks and stuff. So UCF's program is pretty cool for that. So that's the main thing, is the program accredited, and are they going to have the internship experiences that you need, because you're probably going to work with them after you graduate. So that's another question that I don't think any of you guys ask, but I get that all the time. See if I find any more questions. And yes, we don't know if the GRE is going to be psych or general, or if they even need the GRE. If they need another exam, you'll have to look at that program to see. Crystal asks about being a TA. Eden already answered it, but I'll answer it too. To be a teacher's assistant for our psych professors, you do need an A in that class, but it doesn't need to be with that professor. And you could have taken general psych back in your state college and try and ask our general psych professors if they need a TA. It helps if it's a professor that you've had. It helps if it was more recent, because then they remember you, they remember your contributions to class, but it doesn't hurt to ask, because our professors definitely need helpers now. Good question, Marcus. So back when I worked in career services, I did a whole presentation on applying internationally. Now, if the field you want to work in, like if you want to work in the US, you need to see if there's a licensure requirement, because if you're going to apply to a grad program outside of the US, are you still going to be able to work in the US later? So that's kind of important, especially for those going into like counseling or clinical psych. You really need to kind of do an APA or licensed program here in the US. There's a few programs in Canada that might work. But other fields like human factors or academic advising or other graduate programs, you might be able to do internationally. And it's cool because like in Europe, it's only a 1-year program, whereas here in the US, most masters are 2 to 3 years. I have seen some US programs be 1 year too. So like they're like accelerated. So that's something to look into, is in your field, is it okay to do your graduate degree outside of the US? Does it need to be accredited and licensed with the US? Or can you do it there and still work here? If you want to work here, say you don't want to work here and you want to work in Europe, great, go do your graduate degree in Europe so you can go live there. You have to, so typically when you're applying to grad school, it's going to be a different application per program per school. So say you want to apply to UCF's mental health counseling and clinical social work and clinical psych masters because you want to be a therapist, that's 3 separate applications you're filling out. Now, I think for a med school, it's just 1 application you're filling out for the different things. Yeah, psychiatry is med school. No, it's just med school. So like when you go to med school, you declare if you're going to be doing like psychiatry or OBGYN or pediatrics, you declare your track when you go to med school. I think I caught up on our questions. Feel free to ask any more, or if you're comfortable with opening up your mic, you can ask me. It's good that you're asking because some of you guys have questions that others have that just didn't ask. No, I don't see any other questions coming in or anybody typing. So that was definitely like I know that my presentation is very generalized, but that's because our alumni are going to so many different careers, so many different grad programs. So it is going to be on you to research those grad programs and what's needed to apply, when's the deadline to apply, and your job while you're doing your undergrad is to build those relationships so that you have letters of recommendation ready and get good grades. Yes, I'm going to post this Zoom on our social media, on our Facebook, and on our website. How do you find shadowing internship volunteer opportunities? So typically for like counseling, you can't shadow. How do you do an internship? Find an opportunity. Just do a Google search or use Handshake to find internship or volunteer opportunities. Most internships are going to be volunteer, especially in the field of mental health and psychology. It's not a really high paying field. So typically it's going to be a volunteer position, whether it's called an internship or volunteer. It's a relevant experience is what you're looking for. So especially doing virtual, we have virtual internships with, like I said, tutoring and academic coaching and teaching assistant and research assistant opportunities with our UCF professors. So definitely look for those opportunities. But other opportunities, if you feel that you're safe and you want to go volunteer somewhere, if it's safe, if they're doing face-to-face volunteers, great. I know, unfortunately, there's some opportunities not available, like working in the school. Say you want to work with kids. The schools aren't really open, but I do know there are, like daycares and stuff are open. So maybe they'll take on volunteers. I don't know. They might not because they're trying to be safe. So that's the only thing, is just make sure that you're being safe as much as possible. It's a weird time. And definitely refer back to our internship website. I showed you our website for psychology. Oops. Not that. Bam, I have a lot of tabs. So here's our advising center website. I have more about preparing for grad school. You can listen to me talk some more. I've got a whole video, pretty much the same thing. This is a really cool video too from a grad student that was working with me in 2018. She talks more about like a holistic, all-around purpose of applying to grad school. Opportunities, internships. So here's all my stuff on internships and research. So definitely review our website and you can listen to me talk even more. For some reason I can't. There, this chat is so annoying. Yes, LinkedIn is helpful. Thank you, Eden. But I think that's all of our questions. If you have any more, feel free to reach out to psychadvising@ucf.edu and myself or Morgan will answer you. And definitely check out our website. We've got more information. And again, for those of you guys that said you're interested in counseling, hope we'll see you on Monday, because that's what we're going to cover, is specifically counseling, because that's obviously a whole thing in itself. And I might have to do a presentation on PhD, because that's obviously a whole thing in itself as well. But all right, I guess that's everything. Thank you guys for coming. It's been really great to talk to you all and see some of you, because I'm stuck at home, right? I don't get to see anyone anymore. No. I hope you guys are safe, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, bye. Peace out.
Thank you.
Thanks, peer advisors, for helping me. I could just end it. End.